Hello everyone. Thank you for joining to the first webinar on mindsets behind delivering great financial services, financial products delivered here today by UX Design Agency. But before we head into the webinar and into introduction and introducing Albert as well, do you hear us well? Could you please reply in that comment section
YouTube
below?
comment sections, yeah.
Yes,
it's very
no.
important. Yes, no, plus, minus, let us know. Go on.
Okay, I believe that you should be able to hear us. So once again, thank you for finding time to join us today. So as I mentioned, as the topic says, today we're going to be talking about the mindset.
Thank you, Peter.
Behind delivering great user experiences in finance world, and to do that I'm joined here by my colleague and I have to say a dear friend as well, Albert, who's Chief Commercial Officer here at UX Design Agency, and I have to say a guy with experience of actually helping millions and millions of lives of people who are using financial services.
Yeah,
right.
Thank you, Carlos, for these lovely words. And with me today, this evening, this morning, from whichever world place you currently are located, joining me, Carlos, one of our UX Design Agency's most senior UX architects and also one of the most accomplished UX researchers. He recently wrote a huge thesis about how fintechs and banks incorporate design thinking within their daily lives and in product development. Through this webinar, we'll hear some knowledge from this topic, of course, incorporated in the mindsets. But if you're lately, after this webinar, interested in more details about it, feel free to go to our UX Design Agency's blog and read it. There's a lot of topics, and especially one of those are Carlos' topic about design thinking. So, but today, how this webinar is going to look like, why we're doing this, and of course the content itself down. So, what we are doing, we as UX Design Agency, we are the users' ambassadors. We have done a massive time of exploration, of researches, of interviews, focus groups, basically everything that we could. We talked with the users, and we know the financial industry, we know the bankers, we know the people who are building financial products. We know you're busy. We know that sometimes the connections, meetings, and other things, have a direct sometimes line with your users, and for that reason we are here. We are here to be your translator of what users want, how they want it, and how you can deliver that. We are here to make your daily life easier. And what we're going to tell you today, it's not telling you that something is completely wrong in your side or you're completely bad. This is an educational purpose. This is for you to make lives better of millions and millions of users, because what you guys are doing, and just bear with me here, you are changing also lives for millions of people, because finance is something that we do every day, and you have insane impact on that. And we're helping here, UX Agency, me and Carlos, we are helping here to go that direction.
Actually, on that point, I'd like to pause a bit before we had to continue. Albert started talking about that as if you already knew UX Design Agency, so I wanted to clarify. Could you please in comments write yes, no, have you heard or have you encountered
with UX Design Agency, right?
Before?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
and
just briefly, who we are a design agency that focuses only on financial services, as you probably could understand from what Albert said. And I actually have a slide for that, so just let me show that one. And some stats. And in recent years, we delivered more than 50 financial solutions worldwide with a mission of humanizing finance. And actually, kind of to add to what you said, that humanizing finance part is not done only through delivering great products to our clients, but as well spreading the way how we should think to deliver such products. And that's another additional reason why we are here today.
Right. And how this webinar is going down. Today, we're gonna walk you through the overall topic about this mindsets that we have. We're gonna have and talk about some misconceptions, and we will, in the end, have a questions and answers session when we expect you to put down your comments in YouTube, and we will try to answer them as much as possible. But don't be shy. Feel free to interact with us through the comments. Leave the comments down below if you have any questions. If I spot your question and if I have time for that, at that moment, we're going to answer. If not, sorry for that. Repeat that comment in a questions and answers session, and we're going to answer you. So, stay tuned.
So, the mindset. You probably a little bit briefed seen that we're going to talk about the mindset that works, but another mindset that works even a bit better. That's what you said, and that's also mentioned in the presentation title. So just to be on the same page, you, even us, what do you mean by mindset?
So mindset, what is a mindset? And before this webinar and before we even thought about this webinar, I was a bit thinking, a bit researching what other people say about mindset, what it is. They say, hey, you have to have a winner's mindset, you have to have an open mindset, and all kinds of mindsets. And I was questioning what a mindset is. And great analogy for me that came in was a mindset is actually like an operating system.
Okay.
Like your computers or mobile phones operating system. And we know that they differ, and we know that there are technology people who cover this massively, how one mindset or operating system differs from another. So what the mindset is, it is something that you have built over the time since you exist in this world. For example, like we were kids, right? Somebody told us, do not touch the fire, you're gonna burn. Or do not play with the sharp things, you may get accidentally cut. And some people learn because they heard this and they have this authority. Yep, I'm not gonna do that because the authority said so. But other way how to learn is to actually do this bad thing and actually understand that if you touch fire, you can get burned. So what happens when such a thing occurs, when you get burned yourself and something like that, or you hear somebody says to do that, not to do that, you create a rule-based system in your brain. So if I touch fire, it might be bad, and so on. And through the life, as we go through it, we build this rule-based system in our brains. And what's interesting is that everything that we perceive, similarly like in computers, input and output, everything that we perceive, hear, sound, read, interact, goes through to our mind, our operating system, and our output is based on that. So if you have, let's say, in one maximum-oriented mindset and more conservative, your output of whatever you do is going to be more conservative. If you have more open-minded, as they say, mindset, another maximum, your output on the world will be, hey, there's so much possibilities, there's options, and everything's maybe even better. We know about this pessimism, optimism, and everything that falls between. There's many, many types of mindsets. And similarly, today we are here in this design agency webinar where we're going to talk about two mindsets. One of them is marketing-oriented mindset in one maximum, and another one is experience age-oriented mindset. We're not here to trash what the one is, where one is extremely better or another extremely better. We are here to talk about that with you. What happens in today's era if you follow just one mindset or just another mindset, where you can pitfall and where you can win. Am I right?
Well, what I just wanted to add on the mindset thing is that okay, we heard that there's one type of thinking, our way of thinking, but we have our own thinking. You have your own thinking. Each of us have the way we think. We have the values, and usually when we hear of other mindsets, well, it's quite hard to imagine how it works, because we have our perception, our understanding, our so-called rules. And the best way how to understand, for instance, what we're here talking about today, two mindsets that have emerged in the business world, we know, it's quite nice to go back in the past and understand how both of them have originated. So I think let's go back like 20 years ago.
Like 20 years, take a pause and bring yourself, what was 20 years? Because we're all the time focused living in today or the future. So what was 20 years, Carlos, ago?
20 years I was that small kiddo with that dad. And for my dad, for your dad probably as well, for people 20 years ago, all the consumption went offline. So
Right.
if you talk about banking, then for 20 people 20 years ago, and my dad including, went to do any banking services, they went
Basically,
to branch.
if they need anything related to finance, and honestly at that time, basically everything, like subscribe
Yeah.
a newspaper, send mail, right? That's happened now instantly.
Yeah.
They had to go and perform these actions offline.
And to add to that, so back in the day, the technology wasn't that developed, and basically the only means of communication were directed in one direction, from the business to the customer, and that mainly was done through such marketing tools as billboards, as commercials, as prints in magazines or newspapers. So basically, back in the day, people like the businesses were concerned how to better communicate that product due to lack of technologies what we have today, but we're going to touch that later on.
Right.
And in that sense, actually, that worked. It was so expensive. It is still very expensive, but it worked so well.
It worked better than nowadays.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we see that, like, how it worked, because we have such great companies. For instance, if you look at consumer goods, then we have Coke, who within 100 years have developed a base of 1 billion daily drinkers of Coke.
And that's insane.
And
They also put, I read, insane marketing amounts of money
Yeah.
in marketing to achieve that.
so the more money they get, the more money they pour into marketing, so to enter new markets and new markets and new markets. And even in banking, so the same approach has worked. For instance, let's take a look at Deutsche Bank, which originated, was founded 150 years ago, and by now they have a bit more than 30 million customers, which is as well quite a number.
Right.
And then that happened for those years, but now today we have digital companies, who have made this customer base of around 50 million users or customers within few days, within few weeks.
Right.
That's incredible.
And all of that is because something has fundamentally shifted.
Exactly, and what has shifted? We have the internet, we have social media. Basically, you can reach out to any of your customers, to any of your potential clients with no cost.
And that's a networking effect. A networking effect that was, I'm not gonna say impossible, but nearly impossible back in the day, because you knew only just a handful of people to whom you communicated every day, and this was, hey, can you recommend me something? You do recommend me, or you say, hey, read this book, and I might read this book. Now we have this viral thing, thanks to the internet. We all quite often hear viral videos, viral marketing campaigns, viral products, and how this happens? This happens through emotions, through catching one user and giving it to another. And back in the day when we had just a billboard and the end user in the end of the other side, this is one stream connection. Now the brand, the business is connected to other customers, and customers are connected to other customers around the whole globe.
So briefly, just to cover the difference, so we had back in the day, we were living in marketing age, and now we have to the experience age. And in brief, what's the large difference? So in marketing age, as you said,
Yeah.
everything's driven in one direction, and all businesses were concerned how the products are communicated so that they can reach the users. And either product was good or bad, if it was packaged good, if it was communicated good, if you had a really great sales team calling to customers, the product went in and it equaled profit. But what's different today, you didn't have to need that much resources to communicate your product. But the question is, does it deliver experience that people are willing to share to other users with social media? Because today, if 20 years ago, probably the only communication between customers were between friends, me suggesting Albert to use that finance product, for instance. Now I can write in social media to my, let's say, 1,000 followers.
Social media, some reviews, websites,
Exactly.
anywhere, or just even a like something, and that's gonna That's my cause of viral effect.
Exactly, because my review or your review will be read by millions of users who are looking for the same product. And therefore, there we come to the experience. What matters more, the how you communicate, you sell that product, or what is the experience you deliver to your customers that they are willing to share.
To here, I'd like to add, so we talked about what is a marketing age, and Carlos already briefly touched what is the experience age in the future. So the idea here and the mindset is that if you're focused, and quite often we see the huge organizations, huge corporates, not just the banks, but since we're financial or industry-oriented company, then we talk about mostly finances, right? So we see that people in this industry, for some reason, they stick to this old marketing age. They say, hey, we have to research how the customers' spending habits has changed, and we have to adapt our product to their spending habits. And what they fail to completely realize that actually what changes are the possibilities that user can get and users' needs due to that changes. So for example, if you think what killed the music owning CDs, owning and buying music, the streaming industry, some may say, the possibility to stream. And actually, yeah, that's partially true. Now you can stream a song, but in the true actually changed the user's need. In this dynamic world, that's changing all the time, right? The users, what they wanted, when they hear this music, the song on the radio, on the YouTube, wherever, they want to get this song as soon as possible because it's catchy, because they want it. And how to achieve it, they asked how we, as soon as possible, can get from the CD to actually owning a music in my home. So I don't have to go to the CD store, music store. I download the song. We created a possibility to download song, to purchase songs online. Even that was too slow. Next thing came streaming, and this is because users want it. And somebody, as Spotify, as Napster, as other things, they were listening to their users, and they delivered what they want. They gave them experience instead of saying, hey, our CD store has today 50% discount to Pink new album, for example. Come to us. We are the best. We have the biggest store and things like that. This is what's changed. And here again, I'd like to bring you back to the mindset. And on one side, we have this marketing mindset that said billboards, buy, research and customer spending habits. And the other side, we have listen to your customers, care for your customers. And this is what UX Design Agency stands for.
Exactly. And I just wanted to add one thing. Basically, if you asked us what is the question each mindset representative asked, then the first one, what we see in large organizations, okay, how to sell more, how to strive for larger sales or larger conversion. That's one mindset. Other mindset where what we are looking for is how I, as a product owner, can improve the experience of my users. That's a question of the marketing mindset. And it's quite interesting that people nowadays understand the importance of customer centricity, of the experience. And there are many companies,
because the awareness is starting to grow on. We constantly hear the buzzwords, the UX. We have to produce UX. Our company should incorporate UX thinking, methodology, and stuff like that. And I believe on this topic, I have a bit more to explain about the purpose of the UX.
Yeah, like so we can look. So there are many companies who are inviting UX specialists, who are inviting in-house UX specialists as well, and if you think that with UX design you can improve your conversion, like if that's the goal, it's kind of the wrong goal. Like if you look at this acronym UX, it stands for user experience.
It's not just a buzzword, it's the thinking. But before we go into deeper that, let us know in the comments, what do you understand by UX? And because I believe, since you're listening to UX Design Agency's podcast, you're somehow interested in the UX. Yeah. Let us know in the comments for what do you understand with the UX, for what you think you're using it, and what are the things you'd like to achieve that, what kind of purposes, what it gives to your company, what kind of value it provides. Yeah, don't be shy. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because this is the question that we typically ask our clients when we start engage. Somebody pings us up, says, "Hey, I'd like to have this UX thingy in my possession. What do I do?" And we often ask them, for what reason? For what are the end goal after this? What do you see, and where do you see yourself within 1 year after you have this UX in your possession? So let us know in the comments. Carlos, before we hopefully get some answers, what UX means for you? How you feel the UX value for you, or the thinking? How you experience it?
Well, of course, in work.
In work, that's one thing.
In work, but I think when you acknowledge the importance of user experience in your work, or when you're creating your product, I don't know, as an agency representative or within an in-house team, then you start actually acknowledging that everywhere you go, and even in the store. So just recently I had this situation where I go in the shop, I was going for holidays, we were planning to prepare pancakes, and we went to Nutella. So question,
Right.
quick one to you. Where in the store
Right.
you look for Nutella?
I think I would go to the chocolate bar, something with chocolate related, sweets, chocolate,
Sweet
that
chocolates.
kind of area.
Sounds okay. My goal was to put that on pancakes, on bread. So I looked for Nutella in where you have the bread section.
Because it's a great combination. I
Yeah,
get it.
like it makes sense in my mind. Like, where do you go? Like, yeah, Nutella should be by the bread because you put it on the bread.
It's
So,
like Jägermeister with some specific
more or
brand
less,
of
more or less.
energy drink.
But imagine, I went there and guess what? No Nutella. So and then I thought, okay, chocolate sweets, maybe there, hopefully. But guess what? No Nutella. No
Right.
Nutella. So I go to the customer, like the support, no, like the shop assistant. Yeah, that's how you call her. And I asked her, where is Nutella? Where can I find it? Oh, you go to the beginning where the milk is.
Oh, by the milk?
Well, like,
But why the milk?
where
okay.
there's Nutella? Like, I was really confused. So,
Nevertheless.
and here the learning point is that you have to think about the user goals of like specific products, even when you actually are in
Right.
store and store manager.
Good. Thanks for the comment. One of the comments that arrived. Thanks, Alessa. Translate an action into valuable emotion. Wow. Have you any comments on that? So he uses an action to translate a valuable emotion.
Well,
That's deep.
that's deep. Like that would be like my counter question would be, what is the valuable emotion here?
Right. But let's hang into this thought because we have a specifically point dedicated to that. But before we get to these points, I'd like to give you a brief introduction, at least of some of them. What are the most popular answers when we ask our clients, for what reason are you adding UX to your company, to your product, and to your thinking or your sales toolkit? And as I just briefly touched, the sales reason is number one. They say, hey, I just recently read this UX case study where this guy, one UX architect, he changed the layout of the button, and this internet shop turned a revenue of 300 million in 1 month period.
So basically, how to increase sales. Like,
So how to increase sales, how to improve the call to action button. And this is what sometimes some internet shops and even banks sometimes mistakenly say. So we need to increase our revenue and the return on investment. So how we can design this maximum converting product. So this website is our cash machine, as we say let's say in that way.
So then there was this other time when we heard that there was a potential client willing to, asking to, he had this website and a bunch of information. Okay, we have this information. Can you put it in a better way about our products? So thinking about UX as a tool for positioning your information better, that's another one.
Right. And of course, featuring, right? Adding new features. So they said, so okay, we have this dashboard. It already consists of so many features, and we like you to order them in a nice, elegant way, so everything is clear and understandable. We're not getting rid of any of them. And yeah, by the way, we're also going to add 5 more features. Like we have a calendar, we have a planner, we have a dashboard that shows cool graphics, which is going to stuck in features, and we ask why? Because, well, it's gonna most likely sell better. It's gonna have a better appeal for more and more users.
And what's more, there's even some people who have told us that, okay, well, we like to use UX design to outcompete our competitors, to protect our product from them, or even from our customers by hiding some information, but maintaining the sense of trust in a way.
Right. In fragmentation, because they think that this UX thing, tool, or what they hear from the salespeople can help somehow bring some falling things apart back together, or sew them together and make a product look whole again, complete.
Yeah, and all this sounds reasonable. Like, even before when I acknowledge the importance of UX, I like, yeah, this is cool stuff.
But it's perfectly understandable, because I don't want to say that UX is a completely new domain, but thanks to increasing trend and interest in it, there are some salespeople, there are some incredibly engaging blogs that say, hey, you must have UX because that's going to make you money. Because even these, let's say, UX consultants, they think that they're going to sell UX. So saying to the businesses that using UX, you're gonna sell more, right? They're using a completely wrong approach. And there are this, as I mentioned, 300 million button case study. Such things are flowing in the air, in the internet, and when you type UX, these are things that sometimes you stumble upon, and you can get a wrong misconception, a marketing age misconception. And we again here to say that we are here from the experience for age, from the future, to tell you about the future, how in the future people should think and are thinking already and achieving great things. So tell me, what we can give in the front from marketing mindset to from experience age mindset. What stands?
I think yeah, I'd say let's go just through all of these misconceptions and see how experienced mindset people think instead. No?
Right. How do people think? So Yuris is at the moment, and I'm just gonna give a quick question asking. So he's telling that he had a meeting with a colleague. If I'm gonna improvise. So he's meeting his colleague in the elevator, and he has, like, as you know, in elevator do an elevator pitch very quickly, and he's asking how in a quick few sentences you can explain what the user experience is.
Okay, so quickly, the user experience.
How you would tell it?
I think it's user experience. That is a question of how user-centered you are. So that's about asking the right questions. User experience is about understanding what are the user values, what are the user goals within your product, and so on. And even if you look a bit outside the products. User experience in its essence, like it's a part of customer experience, and I think in general framework it's
I would say just have you ever imagined to step into your customer's shoes and walk a day with them? And that will, to that person elevator, will definitely put room to start thinking about.
Yeah.
Great. Moving on to our first misconception about selling. Give us any good examples and explanations what that is.
I think that quite resonates with what we've been talking before. So that like as we looked 20 years ago and even at some parts now, everyone with marketing thinking, you're thinking how to sell more. Basically, if you look at how you develop a product, either good or bad. You create great packaging. Have a really inspiring team and a really great campaign with loads of money poured into the either offline or online ads, and boom, you end up with profit. That's basically was the perfect formula. And if you look at the customer and customer centricity and user experience, then such way of thinking actually uses these these words more like just saying that okay, we are user experience, we have user experience specialists in our team, we are customer centered, and therefore with that they are thinking okay, how we could acquire more customers.
Yeah,
so,
basically how UX can give you a better retention, better sales tools.
yeah,
And as I just mentioned, this a cash machine. This is what they're thinking. So UX is going to help me sell to better use human psychology to sell. And this is extremely wrong, and I believe a bad even misconception, because so yeah, marketing agent, what they use UX, what they use marketing for, they know human brains, they have various kinds of biases, misconceptions, misunderstandings, even errors in our heads, and they try to exploit it in a not good way to sell just you more stuff. Most of it often stuff that you don't need or stuff that doesn't work. What people do with experience thinking, they start to think, okay, we know that there are some errors in our brains.
Actually, there I'd like to just to pause.
Right.
Like we are getting ahead. Like
Okay.
just to understand. Like okay, we are telling this game. They like with the marketing mindset. You think okay, how you can sell with UX. So okay, where's proof? Where's that in practice? So. And there actually comes a story from my personal experience looking for a bank account. So what do you do usually when you look for a bank account? You go to the website,
Of course, right.
So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a sec. So here we are. And the browser. So
your example. Right. So SAB Bank.
So yeah, I was looking for a new bank account. So a lot of my friends have a bank account here, so I went right there, and I was looking how to open a bank account.
Because it makes sense if your friends are at some bank and you typically do the money transfer between them, so it makes sense to go to the same bank, right?
And what's quite so actually, I'd like to even ask you a question. How do you think? Where would you go to look for a bank account there? I think you can type that in comments which section you would go, because when first time when I looked here, I couldn't find a call to action open a bank
And I
account.
believe when you're thinking about opening a bank account, right, in this age, today, 2018, you were not at any moment considering option that you had to go to the branch, because today, most likely, as all of us, we are used to benefits of technology, benefits of customer and consumer oriented markets where any of the businesses they service online. You can get now a news subscription online, any music subscription, movies, all kinds of services, health, food deliveries. You can get basically anything online. This is what we used to, and especially for you at your age and me at my age, we're born with technologies or more almost, and we don't even consider option where we have to interact offline.
Exactly, but yeah. So still, getting back to the example. So my experience look for let's say look at daily banking. Okay, and then you see like loads of options. Like I guess something with you probably like you plan. Like it's not even called you account. So opening that, and there's call action, apply with internet bank. I'm like,
this is the button.
This is the right button. I'm gonna open a bank account online. So in SCB, I was really surprised that they offered that. So when I click there, and I'm
a bit disappointment.
Yeah,
confusing and disappointing, right? Because you thought that here will start a journey of enrolling to the digital bank.
And when I contacted their customer support, and with a hope, I asked them, okay, is it possible to open a bank account online?
The button does
here?
not work.
Yeah, the button does not work. It directs me to internet bank. So, and she says, no, you have to go to the branch. And that was a point of like real disappointment. So I was like, I had this expectation, and no. But
and again, this brings back to what I said. Today we expect that it works online.
Exactly, and instead of providing online onboarding, or even at least providing an option how to do that, how to go to
start
branch.
something. For example, I know that every bank they asks when you start a account with them, they ask you for KYC, know your customer. They ask you many questions. So at this moment, they they could have done something. They could have at least given a button or say, hey, you want to become our customer, here's the button, here's the documents you will need at at the branch, and here's the nearest branch to you. There's many options that they could do better.
Yeah, but instead of providing that, they are showing some like call to action for features and stuff. So, but yeah,
a better example. I know that you have in your pocket something, a good example that addresses this issue of getting yourself an online bank account.
So, and then I look for where you online bank where you can apply online, and I have heard about N26. So when they're clear this message of who they are, clear call to action, open bank account. So what do you do as a curious youngster? You go and click there, and what does it show us? Boom, yeah. And it shows us that, start registration and get your bank account in under 8 minutes. How is that possible?
In Germany.
In Germany. So
not, and here, the SAB Bank is one of our second or third largest banks in our country. And N26 doesn't have branches such, and they're located in Germany. Just the comparison.
Yeah, and probably like just going into the SAB branch would take you an hour. And so here, I think if we put those two examples on scale from 1 to 10, where, so I'm going to go back to slides where I have this presentation.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the person is saying here in the comments that generally banks have a lot of problems with that. I totally agree with that. And this is what I can bring as my comment, as I mentioned. We know, for example, if I would be at SAB Bank, and we have talked with them, we have even friends there, and we know that these guys, they're doing some extremely good stuff under the hood. There's something that they're going to come up at some point is going to be awesome, and we believe them and we wish all the best. There's no direct meaning us to trash the SAB Bank, but the small thing they could do, the small thing they could do, they could, as I mentioned, place, hey, you want to become our customer? Here's a link. And if you click on this link, here are the documents that you will need, here are the nearest branch, and these are the conditions that you need to become our customer. And if you want to speed up this process, you can fill the KYC form now, so you don't have to stick there in line, and it's going to be easier. So not necessarily it's all about whether you have digital enrollment or onboarding or you don't. It's about thinking about your customer. It's about serving their needs, serving this time Carlos' needs.
So therefore if we put them on scale from 1 to 10, where this one is thinking how to sell, like features, like some call to actions,
some products that they had on a website, because they were at some point we looked at this, and it seems that they're treating the website more as a billboard ad, and this kind of old type of a marketing mindset.
And on the other side, the 10 serving, where we clearly see that they've thought of the goals that the user might have when entering the website. The picture is quite clear. So, and probably I think this is time where we could ask a question to our dear listeners. I hope you're
prepared to answer.
Exactly, because think, where would you put your product you have on the scale? Where
because
either your
we
product
all know that you guys here also working. Let's be honest, we all work with some kind of products. Either they're digital, either physical, customer-oriented, again, digital, physical. Let us know in the comments below. How would you rate your product? Is it more oriented towards selling? Is it more oriented towards serving? In the scale 1 to 10. And if you're brave enough, feel free to leave us in the comments also a link to it, a screenshot, a little description of what your product is and why you figured out that it's 5, 6, 7, or 9, for example. Let us know. We're very interested and very curious. But for you, Carlos, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Let's say somebody has rated this product at 6, 7, stuff like that. What would you suggest a person to do tomorrow morning to improve his scale, to improve his grade from 6 to 7, for example? The easy thing.
Yeah. First thing, just take a look either your landing page or your product dashboard and think of the most, like 5 most important goals user has when opening that dashboard. For instance, if you look at the banking dashboard, that would be looking at your balance, having a quick view on your most recent transactions, maybe some KPIs and quick money payment, for instance. So thinking about the goals and thinking and prioritizing that over the other information you have there. That's one thing. But I think it's more crucial to look at this from the organizational level, because one of the messages with this webinar is that at the very end, the product actually is the reflection of the organization itself, how it's structured. And here, how to raise this sense of serving among the members of all members of organization, not only among the management or the development who actually creates the product.
Right.
How you invite your customer support. I think every customer support receives some feedback, some complaints, something.
They are the ones who are the closest to the end user, right? In this board member room, when some high guys are theorizing, so what our customer wants, what we can give, how we can increase sales number, it's time, as you suggest, in this room, invite a support member, any of these guys who are actual indirect touch with the user, is because these guys, they know their complaints, they know what the pain are. They can explain to others, and so the team has a possibility to improve.
Exactly. That's how all the members of the organization, by reading that and answering that,
right. Also, yeah,
can get and understand the pain of the user, can understand how the customer feels, and even reply to that. And that's one of the ways that we discovered in research I did for thesis, that that's one of the ways how you can raise this customer centricity in your organization, starting from the marketing and ending with AML officers, for instance.
Right. Great. And so to recap, what we suggest to do is one thing, to place yourself, as I mentioned, for the elevator pitch guy, place yourself in the customer's shoes. And if that's a hard way to do, or it's hard to imagine, invite your users to the room. For example, Jeff Bezos, what they do in Amazon,
that's a good one.
They have, in their board room, they have one empty seat always. And this empty seat is reserved for the users. And when they have discussion, disagreements, something like that, they tend to ask, at least Jeff Bezos does, he asks, okay, if our user would be sitting here, what he would tell us, what he would want that. That's a very, very good thing to think about it.
Yeah.
So let's get to the next
Exactly.
next misconception. And next misconception is a very great one. It's information. So people in a marketing age, what they do, they say, hey, you need to know more. Because if you know more about me, you're gonna like me. So I'm gonna give you reasons. I'm gonna give you an essay, wall of text, why you should love me. Tell me how that works.
And before, as we jump back into the past 20 years ago, there weren't that many ways of communicating your message to your user. Now you have every means of communicating all of your messages to our potential and existing customers. Media, so much information that I think of the most of the information that is out there we're not even aware of. And therefore, users are not that attached to reading a paragraph about your product if they have as well so many alternatives available. For instance, now even choosing a bank account either in Latvia or in Germany or in United Kingdom or Lithuania or United States, so you can go on and on and on. So many alternatives, and I think you can actually even add to that, because I think you were the one who told me about that research on the fact that reading is an artificial skill for us. That's not a common thing.
And that's done, so basically David A. Souza, one guy who wrote a book and a study about reading, how humans read, and that actually he uncovered that thing is that's an artificial thing. We didn't born with this skill in this world. We had to go to the school, we had to go and study with our friends, parents, teachers. Even I remember my mother taught me how to read, and that was a struggle. And for some people, reading is still a struggle. Why? Because you have to put in an effort to read. and effort to understand what you have read. So, I believe you can relate to me, and please let me know if I'm correct. When sometimes by the end of the long day, there is like this presentation or email, you know that you read it, but you have no clue, no understanding what it said. You know you kind of read it, but it doesn't sink in. And that's because, again, as I mentioned, reading is something you have to put an effort in it.
Yeah.
And this is what in the study was written. And what we can put instead of this thing. And why happens so, right? Because through the evolution, our brain was firstly, as a reptile brain, it was developed so it reacts to something emotional, something visuals, a sound, a color. For example, if you're sitting in a bush and you hear that something's coming towards you and in a trembly speed and the speed increases and the noise becomes bigger, it's your brain goes alarm, alarm, you got to run. You stand up and you go. If, for example, you again crawl in other bushes and you smell something smells good, something there is, you split down these bushes and what you see a red shiny apple or some kind of berry, instantly, oh, I must try it. And this was what's completely coded into our brain, and you don't use any effort in it. A great example, again from another book, what happens, and we completely cannot control it. When you're in a restaurant and you hear any dishes fall down, what happens? All the restaurants takes their backs and turns ahead. What happened? This is something you cannot control. And this is emotional part of the brain. As we grew bigger, smarter, learned to make fire and all kinds of things, it took an effort. And our brain developed. And this is our newly developed brain part where we have to analyze, we have to think, we have to put an effort in it. And this sometimes gets tired. And like when you make your user, your customer read a wall of text of why you're better than competitor, why you're so good and that good, it's not what goes completely effortless to them.
So I think here I can take over and show what we mean by that, and in terms of how it looks, for instance, on interface. And let's say we were looking for a mortgage, so we Google it, of course. Google mortgage, look for the options, and we end up opening this one, SBI Bank, that there's like information about who they are, about the options, how you can log in. You have quite extensive menu there, some things even duplicating there. You read it through, but does it create any connection with you? Does it create any connection with you?
Not much. Well, there is a smiley guy with some, but he's handling something errors in red and warning sign. This is like mostly not super positive emotions.
Yeah. So
not much though.
So what do you do? So being aware that you can find other mortgages, you just go back and continue looking for other alternatives. And there we come to...
Because often when you browse something in the web, you find something, it's like, ugh, this is so much, I don't want to read even this. And when you don't even tend to start reading it too much because you know that there's alternatives.
Exactly.
And alternatives might be better, easier to comprehend and understand.
And kind of adding to what you said, and I think one of our listeners commented as well, one of the things for using UX is about creating and delivering emotions to your user, creating connection, because at the end, users not looking for reading a paragraph about your product. They want something that connects.
A valuable emotion.
Exactly, that connects with them, right?
Right.
And
that's true. Thanks for the comment, and if you have anything else to comment.
And if you look at the interface, how do we achieve that? So, emotional design, interactive information architecture that you're aware of.
Well-thought information architecture, exactly, yeah.
As a user, you're aware that where each information part goes. So that, for instance, if you look for a mortgage, that you construct your, if you're providing mortgages, then you construct your website landing page accordingly. That there's a keyword mortgage, for instance, in menu, and you go through and user finds respective information. So it's again looking at the user journey there.
Show us a good example.
Exactly. So back to defining the mortgage.
So Yeah, and later on I'm going to touch about this really interesting topic that you just explained, the information architecture. This is extremely
Go
valuable.
ahead.
No, show us your example. I'd like to hear, and then
Okay.
explain you why it's good example and how you can achieve similar solution for your banks.
So you open up the website. So we here open the Atom Bank. So we see that, okay, they are the future of banks. So like really clear message, and you read through. Okay, they offer the mortgage. Then kind of you notice the background. It's colorful. You see their
brave.
hands raised, meaning that something revolutionary, something
Joyous.
new, right?
Right.
And as well, the thing that Albert's going to explain more in a bit, the information architecture, again, clear. And there you have mortgages, and you go and explore more. Or even if you're not looking for a mortgage, but if you're just passing by the product, and this first page is so engaging that the user will be willing to scroll further.
Right.
You have
Good
created a
example.
connection.
A good example. And they haven't here explained why exactly you have to take a mortgage, what are the interest rates. It all comes later because they address the primary, at least one of the needs of their users, what they have asked them to deliver. So at this point, as previously, we will ask you to rate from 1 to 10 in a scale where your product is, how you think about it, maybe even if you have an example of other kind of banks, if you're not, or financial products if you do not want to share your own, and say, hey, I think this and that bank, I think this and that product should be on a scale, information to emotion on that scale, because let us know. We are curious. So, I wanted to tell you here what are the two key main factors of emotional design. First of all is, of course, emotionally engaging picture. That can be also sounds, music, although not very popular used in the web. Back in the days it was, but now actually the emotional image here it plays a very, very powerful role. But what else? That's a visual thing, right? That is the first thing that you see, great. And then there is indirect way how to provide emotions, and what the Atom Bank and many other extremely good services have done. They have created a well thought through information architecture. This is one of the UX artifacts that any UX architect does when they're creating the information of the platform. So what they do, they ask their users, why are you coming to our site? What are the reasons, and what kind of information you're looking for? What is your primary scenario here? And they give their answers. Well, I'd like to get information about that. I'd like to get myself a mortgage. I'd like to have a car lease. I'd like to open a bank account. So we understand that of the whole 100% of scenarios, users' reasons why they're in our website or in our dashboard are these four. So what do? We construct information architecture in these four, let's say, blocks, branches, with of course additional branches, but they're not as important. We have to focus on these core scenarios, because when the user comes to your site, to your platform, to your dashboard, and they have in mind one specific thing or a couple of specific things, they know where to look for it. And when they find where they were thinking they're looking for it, they have a great emotion. They say, oh, it was where I expected it to be, and that causes good emotions.
Actually, on that, since I've got a better question, so kind of going back to the comment about the valuable emotion, like the UX is about providing valuable emotions. So I'd like to raise the question how to find that emotion. Okay, we talk provide emotions. What emotions to provide there? Should I choose just a random, okay, I have a landing page and, oh, let's make it funny. Let's have them a funny feeling. Why should I do that? Like, that's the question. Why
how the brands, if you're a product builder, so this is also could be a question, let's ask it differently. If, again, you'd like to increase rating of your product from 6 to the 7, what would you do? And as you already said, where would you look for this emotion?
So I think, so you kind of covered the part what to do with the product, but then again, we have to look at how to position that within the company. So, and if we look at within the company, we have to understand what are the values we stand for, what is the purpose for our company, and from there we can understand what are the emotions that can explain these values to our customers or even to our employees. For instance, at Atom Bank, we clearly see what are the emotions that they want to deliver there. That they're something new in the industry, offering revolutionary mortgage rates in the United Kingdom. You kind of get that there. Right. The question is what emotions you provide there. So and it's quite crucial to understand when you're building business or when you've already have created that. And the question is, okay, there are, let's say, the inner circle, the management, or some people who are aware of that. How do you spread that across the organization? And I think a great thing to do is what many companies do. They have, okay, first, of course, is really engaging the organization, the culture of the organization. And what do I mean by that? Let's say what we have here at our company, what usually our CEO Alex does. Like we got our app and like once for a while, and he like inspires about like what we stand for and why we are here. And I already explained before that we are here to humanize finance, and it's really great feeling to be there and deep and to listen to that, and you're inspired to do stuff, and that resonates in the product.
Right. That resonates in the people, in the product, and what they deliver. So information over. But emotions over information. Think about how you can connect to your brand, to the values you stand for, and how you can translate that into your product, or at least in the beginnings. Let's start with small things in your landing page, in the small things. That's easy. That's small fixes, and doesn't cost much effort. Let's move on to the next misconception.
Right. So the next one. Featuring, so that was the one that Albert's introduced. So how to look for killer features, better features, more features. Because the common misconception is to think that the more features you have, the better features you have than your competitors, the higher is the chance that the customers, the potential customers will come to you, that the existing customers will gain the more satisfaction. And that used to be right. And even today, if you ask the customer, okay, what kind of features do you want in our service, in our product? They answer, okay, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want everything. But at the end, the user expects something else. And still, there are many companies, not only in banking, all over, who offer many options. You go to call the dealership, and the salesperson comes there, okay, we have heating there, other stuff there, and more and more and more, and they think that that's going to sell. No, they just want, most cases, like at least I can tell from my personal perspective, I look forward to a solution how to get from the point A to point B, so therefore I use car sharing.
Right. So, what also is a little misconception sometimes, the more features you have, the more users you're going to please.
Yeah.
That's also extremely dangerous of thinking. So we're gonna add this small feature, or we're gonna add this big feature just to please a small percentage of our total users. So we're not letting them go or not letting them leave this product. So this is featuring as from the marketing mindset. Let me know what we can give from the experience mindset.
I think but before we had to experience it, let's have a small example insight.
Okay, let's move with example.
And how it looks in the bank. So this is a screenshot from his bank, from payment section.
Is.
Sorry, I just thought like it would be really nice to insert that there.
This is actually one interesting example. So yeah, in this bank, I opened my credit card bank account. Again, not to trash, these guys are great for their own reasons. There was actually emotional reason why I opened my bank account with these guys. I completely love them. They give this feeling of the underdog in a country, and they're again doing great things. But at the same time, their payment form is confusing as hell, right? They offer so many payment features in so many ways. But honestly, of all of them, I use only one. This can be again said as Pareto's law. 80% of the time people are using only 20% of functions. And in this case, I need only one. And the funniest, not the funniest, but the saddest maybe at some point thing is the first time I've logged in, after receiving my credit card, I want to transfer money from my credit card account to my salary account in a different bank. And I was trying to uncover what kind of payment option I have to click.
Yeah.
And what's interesting also here that in every bank they describe these payments in their own weird economical terms, from internal payments, external payments, within your bank accounts, but external bank accounts. And these names are crazy. And these guys, they were trying to put all the possible payments that you could have in front, and that's a bit too much. That's an overkill.
And here, I think I can share one of the most important learnings that we stand for, and when we are delivering great products, is that users are not looking for a list of features. At the end of the day, they are looking for the solution. And that's one of the reasons why so many startups strive now, because due to their lack of resources, they produce a really simple MVP. Not many features, mostly just one, but deadly simple. And that's the reason why quite so many people are going for such alternatives as N26, as Monzo, as Revolut. You name them, they're all out there. And but even they I kind of can get into this trap of over-featuring. As you grow your customer base, different customers appear with different needs. So you think, okay, how we can comply with those needs, and then you start building featurings, and you might end up at the same as is the Citadel payment section,
right,
for instance, there. And therefore, actually, we had, I think you recall this client, we had similar challenge.
This was an interesting challenge, because what we are trying to ask clients, so you're making payments, what do you want? He says, well, what kind of payments you want to make? He says, basically, I want to make a payment. I don't care what kind of payment, I just want move my money from the point A to the point B, and that's it.
So the situation there was that the client had almost the same payments,
right? Almost the same payments, but even more actually, because they had a crypto payment, they had email, possibility mobile, to send money on email, on the mobile, and so on, and plus all of what you saw in previous example.
So instead of providing all these options to choose from, we provided only one form where by inserting the IBAN or
any other
crypto,
payment address,
the respective payment form would be given. Instead of making user think how to send their money, we thought of thinking a way how they could just send money.
Right.
Taking out the thinking part. Right. Because at the end, that's our duty in the experience age as product specialists, as product developers, owners, managers, taking out the part where we make user think, whereby providing only with the solution.
Right. And as you mentioned, this is understanding the goal, what you want, what your users want. What are the reasons why you have built this tower of the features? What the purpose of all of these features are? What are the reasons why this customer uses your product? And if you find those 1, 2, 3 reasons, you can provide them a solution. And this is what we encourage to you. And what I'd like to one comment right here from Yuris, what he told about this Camel Active. You know the brand Camel Active.
Yeah.
And you have been to their shops. They're all like wooden and brownish colors and stuff like that. And what he says, it's like because he wanted to create this sensational feeling of going back to nature, feeling connected with nature. And I can say that when you step in those shops, you can feel it.
I agree.
This is what we're talking about. And this is great when it is done on top of the level and then it's translated to the whole organization.
So that's a value that organization stands for, and that's the thing they are delivering.
And in this case, when we ask about featuring and solution, this also translates into all organizations. You have to ask organization, the people who are responsible for the product, what are the purpose of our product? What is the essence? What if there are 3 things that we do better than others, or what could be those 3 things that we could do better than others, than competitors? What would those 3 things would be, and focus on those 3 things. And again, this is the problem. What happens, they think, okay, we're going to add more features, so we're going to have more people using our product, but they don't create at least 1 or 2 or 3 features that works extremely good. And this is why challenger banks actually are named challenger banks, because they challenge the status quo of adding more and more feature. But
actually, we could try again,
rating.
the rating.
Exactly.
So we have a scale. We have these 2 examples that we discussed before. Again, we really encourage you to share how would you rate the product you're operating or the product you are using in your daily lives from 1 to 10, where 1 is a product that offers lots of features, whereas 10, where a product is provides the solution that you don't have to think how to, for instance, send money or I don't know, open a chat or find the most necessary things on your whatever you need. So
yeah, let us know in the comments,
and
let us know if you have any other maybe product that you'd like to say it's not yours. Even link it and tell us what it is. And a good question also from one that as I read previously was, and I'd like to answer that, how you can measure that experience approach is working, right? And this is extremely good question, and this is we also received this question quite a lot, I would say, from our clients, especially who are not sure whether they want to have this UX thing or not. So let's say if you're measuring the sales, it's easy to measure sales. Our revenues have increased dramatically. Our salespeople are now receiving huge bonuses. Our KPIs are soaring up. Good stuff. But experience thing, it's hard to measure. It's hard to put in the numbers, but then you can definitely see its results. For example, as you mentioned, your customer complains about, so I cannot find how to export my bank account statements. I have no clue how much money I have in my bank account. I cannot make a successful payment, so they're calling their support center and complaining, where is that? How can I do this? How can I do that? The things of that reduces dramatically. That's one thing. Another thing is that you can definitely hear people, you should use this product instead, or you should at least give it a try. Because when the product is well thought about, well thought through, well built, what people do, they like to brag about it. In today's interesting time when we like to feel special. I personally like to be a knowledge resource. I'd like to feel special. I'd like to say, Carlos, you know, I'm using this and that challenger bank. By the way, we are talking about one example, exactly that example later, so I'm not gonna name it now. Carlos, you definitely have to try this challenger bank because their payments are extremely easy, and this solution that you had, it worked for your one of the main purposes, making the payment in such an easy way that it's like wow for you, and you like to go and come to me and share your experience, and your emotions are very catchy, as we discussed previously, and I will try that product.
I think that's one thing, so that you want to brag about that or share your experience. The other one that I personally encountered, and not only by telling someone, but someone telling me, is that usually you go around and you hear people telling about their problems that they have, they don't like, or they're disappointed with their banking, or etc. And that's the point where, when, for instance, I'm aware of a better solution that might better work for that person, you just tell that. And now it's much easier, but as we discussed, social media technology and internet.
So what would you say, let's say banks, right? They have tons of features oftenly, as one of our listeners here points out. What can you do? We had this situation, we have tons of the features and we don't want to get rid of them. What can we do as UX architects? What we can suggest?
I think,
and that could be also an answer how to move your product from featuring to solution in a scale, let's say 5 to 6.
Okay,
Same question basically. What would you do to help to increase this solution?
So we look at this product, and I think we have to turn on this special mode, what I call solution mode on, and you look at the product from solution perspective, meaning asking a question, how these features solves the goals of my user. That's one thing, but most importantly would be you have these features. You first acknowledge the scenarios, most scenarios that why your user uses these features that they have, like these banks, for instance. That would be the first thing. Second thing, prioritize them. Which one is more important, which is not that important, and afterwards. And third, based on that prioritization, structure them in a meaningful way.
Right. Good example. Thank you.
I think we can move on, right?
Let's move on to the next misconception.
The next one is quite a tricky one, since that might be quite controversial in a way, because it's telling that you use UX for protecting your business from competitors or even your customers. Like, that's a blunt thing to say.
Yeah.
What have you got to comment there?
Protection. Wow. This is interesting. It's maybe not often done consciously.
Yeah.
But I would say not also subconsciously, but this is how, again, our operating system filters out. Because, and how it even originated. Back in the day, or at least even now, you create a business. Maybe you create a niche-oriented business that nobody has ever thought. What happens? You dominate the market. You have 100% of market share because you're the one.
Yeah.
After a while, somebody says, hey, I see what these people are doing, and I know that I can give or offer something better to them. Great, a competition. So these two guys are now splitting the market. Now, after a while, enters more and more people in this market. And what the dominant leaders then are doing, or what they're, especially when you're bigger, what you're thinking about are the numbers, because each of these small numbers, they insanely increase your revenue. So you're thinking, okay, if we lose or increase our market share by that and that percentage, we're going to win or lose. And what they do, they start focusing on protecting their market. Yeah. This is what they're saying. Okay, so what's happening? We have a board meeting. We're saying, okay, our competitors, let's say the same example, all the banks, all the financial huge institutions, and then there are some bunch of challenger banks. Of course, the banks has insane market share over, let's say, what together has these challenger banks. But they're fighting about how many customers we have, how many loans we have issued, how many leases we have issued, and so on. This is what they fight for. They're fighting for the market share, while what the experience-oriented things, banks, fintechs are fighting, they're fighting how we can again serve the customer better. They're thinking, so how can we challenge this old, rusty process of enrollment that we saw in the previous example, how we can challenge this old, rusty way of over-featurizing, how we can challenge this, how we can even the word disrupted, right? They're thinking of that. And slowly, while disrupting, these guys are fighting for the market share, and these small guys are fighting for disruption. They can accidentally, purposely, accidentally create some product that never exists, and that's gonna take all over the rest of the market, right? That's insane if you think about it. It takes time to process it, but this is what happened with the iPhone and Nokia case, right?
Oh, that's good.
That's a legendary thing. These guys, the Nokia in this case, in 2007 when the iPhone came out, they had 1 billion of people who had and hold an iPhone, Nokias at the time. 1 billion. They were dominant. I remember I was kind of small then, but
you probably thought like Nokia, that's everything.
Right, there was a Forbes magazine, like 1 billion mobile phones.
Yeah.
Who can compete or kill this beast? Well, the iPhone did. And why they did it? Because they were understanding they cannot win Nokia. In their own game, they cannot beat it. They have to think differently, I have to say. They have to step out of this box that's currently exists. They have to go out of this paradigm that has been created. 10 years later, what happens? Nokia has 350 million something phones, and iPhone is one of the most dominant and profitable phone makers in the world. So the times can change. They can't take even such a huge dinosaurs, animals down. It's possible. And this is what is very, very, very for the rest of the market.
Exactly, and then if we take a look at that from different perspective, from like you were talking more about competitors and protection, like you said, Nokia,
right.
protecting and thinking, okay, they have the market, they're the best, and then Apple coming disrupting. That even occurs when we look at the business customer communication. For instance, if you take a look at international wire transfers, I think everyone's familiar with that, and everyone's familiar with this form that we now see on this screen. Let's say you want to fill in form and send money to your friend in Russia.
I don't want to fill that form.
In Russian rubles, and that's big. Of course, you get familiar, but what I want to draw attention there, I think you can agree from your experience that when you go through, when you input that, 1,000 euros in Russian rubles, you usually don't see the amount, how much that's going to be at the end. You even see what's the currency exchange rate they're going to apply there.
Because at that time they actually don't know the currency exchange that could be. That's very tricky moment, and here we have. I was like, okay, why? In a sense, on one hand, they are protecting their legacy, the systems they have. That's one thing. The market share of existing transfers, wire transfers.
Exactly. Yeah. Because transfers like lots of money into your organization account. So, but instead, we are living in a world where everything's changing. Instead, we have to look how we can disrupt ourselves, because at the very end of the day, now to provide a better experience, you have to think how to disrupt yourself on behalf of your customers, basically. That's the reason why you're there. And instead of protecting from your competitors, we should think how we can gain inspiration from them, for instance.
Right. How we saw what they did. So everybody's going one direction. How we can, and what will happen if we go a different kind of direction? Because now we have a time. Because all of us, we are going the same direction. Can we put an effort to disrupt it? Disrupt this direction. Create even a new way of going, new path. Right.
So, and I think if we I think we can now, all of us agree upon the fact that if you want to improve the experience, that means you have to disrupt in a way.
Right.
And I think we can, in that sense, we can take a look at the example where this adding extra fee or long wire transfers is being totally disrupted.
Right.
So I think you know what we're talking about. So
of course,
transfer-wise, low fees, fair currency exchange rate, and different technology that makes it available to have that low fees for the payments.
Right. That was what these guys did. For me, it's astonishing and incredible. And actually, it seems so simple in the end, right? So the currency exchange, how it works, basically, at least for the wire transfer, how it works in the banks. So one guy is sending, let's say, USDs to the euros, so he's sending money to a different kind of bank, wallet routes to that bank. Then somebody has to purchase and exchange money, USD dollars for euros. He has to pay the commission fee. While the money was going or sending, the fee has changed, since the fees change extremely fast. And that's why maybe the reason why we don't know the fee at the end. And of course, we have to insure our bank from frauds. So for that, we have to put some kind of risk insurance money in. And of course, the people who are doing this job manually, we have to pay these guys. So why not to charge, as you said, quite a nice amount of money, because you're doing the wire transfer and it takes work for us. That's the old thinking.
So, in what TransferWise did instead, basically,
that's genius.
They thought, how to disrupt in that sense, and how to disrupt that. So, what they did, they just basically took that middle part away. So, basically, you have a person willing to send money. Let's say an American sending dollars to Europe in euros to be exchanged in euros. And meantime, there's this other person in Europe willing to send some euros to other friend in the United States. So basically, what happens, instead of having this exchange or having the middle process that you clearly presented here, the money that the European guy sent to the United States actually goes to the guy to whom the American one was sending the money, and vice versa. So that's incredible. And I think that opens the way how and gives us an example how we should act upon our products as well.
But that approach is genius. And it's genius because banks actually, they had the resources to create the same approach. They had all the possibilities, they have the technology, they have the people and the infrastructure, they have connections to these guys who are doing exchanges all the time. They could implement it, but they never cared to start fixing it. And that is what astonishes me. And what happens now? Why we call this a disruption? Because the more I read, the banks are nowadays tending to create more partnerships between them and fintechs, and now more and more banks are ditching their wire transfers that made them money of the commissions, right? Record that. They're ditching their wire transfers for opening possibility to use a wire transfers, TransferWise system. And what's even more interesting, that they are actually paying TransferWise for the possibility to use their backend system. So they're even, let's say, losing money on these transactions at some point, if you think about it. So that is insane. This is the power of disruption. This is a power as somebody starts, as you said, questioning things. When somebody starts to asking things and saying, hey, how and what we can do better, and what are the possibilities to do better.
And wrapping up on that.
That bombshell, right? It's time to compare.
Yeah, and I think the picture is quite clear. Okay, probably you don't see the slide. So, presentation.
So, at this moment, as per usual, we are curious to know from 1 to 10, where would you place your product? Where and how would you rate your existing product? Either it's more protecting, are you using all kinds of features, methods to protect your product, or you're thinking about disruption? Are you constantly empowering disruption within your team, within your product? Let us know in comments below. But one question actually, Carlos, that I had in mind but I didn't ask you. So theoretically, right? If anybody or you or somebody says, hey, my product's completely 10, right? Can that be a true, and what would you say to that person who would said, because I know with this topic you had a presentation to Lenia in a login conference, and I even know that some banker came to you and said, hey, I have a complete 10 of my product.
I think if you have created a product and it follows, it satisfies all the needs of your users, it follows or even goes beyond the current technology there is in the market, and etc., then at that given point when you've done that, it might be a 10. But I think it's quite important to acknowledge that now we're living in a world where it's all the time changing, improving, new things, new needs, new technologies, new ways of doing regular banking. So in the long run, it's never going to be a 10, because what are the needs of today for the users won't probably be the needs of the users tomorrow. They're going to be different, and the same applies about technology. So your question was, can I rate? No, you can, because you have to always be thinking, how can I improve and how can I deliver better experience?
Right. And this is what I'd like to also add, that the person who has this experience age thinking, he would never ever say I am full 10. It's like a person who says I know everything.
Yeah.
I know everything about some kind of specific domain and I'm expert in it. It means that he doesn't know jack, right? Because the person who knows things, he understands how many things more he could learn.
And given the fact, all the information we have around the different products we have all around, we can never say that we are the best, because if you look at the payment services, there are thousands of them now.
Right. And to increase your score, to be more disrupting, as we already discussed, you would ask questions. Ask questions within your team. Ask questions at the beginning for yourself. Ask questions to your users. Are we actually providing the solutions? What you need? Can there be actually a different kind of way of producing solutions? Especially take a scout at what's happening around. What's happening in technology world? What would be if you could not use what's trendy now? If you could not possibly use existing features? What could be if you take a different approach? There's questioning, there's self-reflection on the products, and then meetings, discussions with the teams, researches, because technology, and it's changing extremely fast. Just one moment, everything was happening through these computers, laptops, to our stationary computers. And what happened? The touchscreens were introduced. It showed basically what we do. We do exactly the same what we used to do, but in a different way. And that's how we do in a different way, thanks to the mobile phones, to the touchscreens, to having an internet wherever we go, changes how we book, for example, airplane tickets, changes how we read news, changes how we shop online. It changes everything. Such a small technology enhancement and such a small device changed our lives completely. This is the power of disruption. And so the question is always, look at what's there, look at what's technology there, look at how your users' needs changes over time. You have to be aware of them.
Or basically,
and ask questions.
The essence of disruption is questioning, and the basic question you can ask you every day: how can I improve? How can I improve personally, or how can I improve our product, for instance?
And the last but not least, what we have a misconception is about fragmentation. This is an interesting topic.
I could give an example, like, to understand, like, what do you mean by fragmentation, and how it occurs in organizations, and later on is reflected in businesses. So imagine, you have the customer support. They receive feedback, complaints, and one day they receive like quite a dozen of them. Let's say there was a new improvement on your product. Mm-hmm. So, and what is the common thing that we've heard? What's being done for the customer support? They just change the script for them so they can properly answer, or add some more people to kind of make sense of all of that. So to kind of have the power to reply quickly enough, which is fine. But then again, here we have to understand why those complaints have come in the first place, and that is not a problem of customer support, but that is something that originates from how the product is created and what is the experience that is delivered. I think you touched on this before, of the value of UX, that the better the experience, the less there are questions that are also your customer support.
Less friction.
Exactly, and this is what we mean by fragmentation, that there are businesses that kind of separate these parts. They view these as two independent parts. So we have the customer support, we have the product development.
And not just that, right? Sometimes in a bigger organization, I have worked for one, what the teams do, they typically blame other teams. So they say, oh, that's not our department, that's a question to them. And then these guys say, no, ask that different department, and so it goes in a circles. So when fragmentation in a company, what do you mean by that? That the product is developed, product originated at one team, it was given to another team to develop, a different team to, let's say, design it, again a different team to market it, and the third team to support it, right? And then none of these teams discusses or negotiates with each other. They just had to do their job because they have these performance reviews. They have to outperform them each quarter. And they don't care about improving the product. They care about their egoistic, intrinsic needs. And what suffers the product, and suffers your image as a brand, suffers your image as a company.
I think at the very end,
suffers the user.
Exactly.
Right. For example, I have a good example for this one. Previously, about the bank where I was getting a credit card, you saw previously. I found about this, of course, online. So in the online, I signed up for, hey, I want to get a credit card. Okay. So they gave me online form to fill out the KYC information. So I filled out the complete all KYC information. I was happy. They said, okay, with this KYC information, you will get your credit card faster at the bank. It's going to be cool stuff. Go ahead. I was extremely happy, so I went to the bank and I said, hi, my name is Albert, and I have fulfilled the KYC and stuff. They said, yeah, sure, and they printed out the same KYC, empty, and asked me, now please fill this information, sir, with your hand, and give us your signature, and then we're going to give you the stuff. And I said, Well,
Did you feel
apparently,
that?
apparently, first of all, I was disappointed. I have to fill the
Okay.
same information once again, and I thought, okay, clearly, there are two departments who has never spoken
But the
before.
question is, did you actually fill that once again?
Of course, I filled out. I wanted my credit card, and but without any frustration and unhappiness. And what I see, my viewpoint to this, well, is this sucks. If I would ask to the person at the branch, so how this comes and do you guys even communicate in between, she would give me a kind of excuse or reason how the organization is built, how things are happening there, or what's not implemented in the
Yeah.
backend system, why she didn't had that kind of information at the time. But again, this is the viewpoints in their organization. They say, well, this is how we work, so what can we do about it? A human, and we in our end, we perceive all of the process in one flow, right? We don't see these fragments. We perceive as a whole one thing. And if there is one weak or broken chain link, then we see the experience is broken. That's
exactly, and we actually have prepared an example where we can see that.
Right.
In, for instance, like in payments. So let's take a look there. So I'm just gonna regulate the presentation. Yeah, we can see that. So that's a screenshot from, like, actually screenshots from my banking application that I have, and you have the payments, you have the confirmation. It seems decent. Actually, it has improved a lot. It's like 2 years ago, I think you can relate to this. To confirm a payment, you had to take out a code card from your
plastical
wallet.
card, yeah, or the
and
physical
type-
calculator, that
Oh
one.
damn! But and now he has Smart ID, but still the friction actually remains. Like the experience is broken due to the fact that you do the payment in one application, and then when you tap confirm, you're sent to another application to confirm that. And there is even bigger frustration when you're using that Smart ID for the first time, or you
The
can't go
setup
back.
is
And
complicated, yeah.
and of course, the product developers have thought that, okay, we're gonna add that there in that flow to ensure secure payments, which is I think that's really
It's a
great.
better improvement of existing thing, but again, introducing a new link to your ecosystem causes troubles. And I have experienced some of these troubles. For example, for some no reason, I have no idea, and actually I followed this. There was a hashtag or some kind of keywords on Twitter where people were discussing their problems with this Smart ID thing. Sometimes the notifications get disabled.
Yeah.
So I tried to log in and I never received
Oh.
this request that, hey, we need to confirm that you is you.
Wow.
Then a special pain happens when you when you buy a new device. Right? You
Oh,
buy
yeah.
a new device, you
Went
have
through
to
that.
set up this thing again. And then again, there's also, because of that, again, there's problems with notifications. We have to go to the Smart ID website to deactivate previous device and reactivate new device. So there is, with the new, with entering as saying adding new link to the chain, and that might sometimes not be stable, you're introducing the problem. And for them, when you ask these guys who own this bank, they say, well, that's not our problem, that's these guys, we're going to forward them your complaint and hopefully it will get fixed. And from my side, from the user's perspective, I view it as this bank's fault. I don't see this as a Smart ID's fault. I see it as a bank's fault because, again,
exactly.
I perceive this as a one whole experience, and sometimes this experience gets broken because of this middleman.
Exactly. In that case, that was a Smart ID. But what you're saying, I think, what I can kind of conclude, like summarize this idea here, that our brain, or the brain of our users, our brains, we perceive everything as one thing. We see a business, we think that's one thing. We don't see the departments, we see that's the one thing. We look at the application here, and we say, okay, that's my banking application, not a set of separate sections. And if we look at everything, human brain tries to create a context of the things that we see all around and make that as a whole thing. And therefore, I can truly say that we look in a flow, we perceive that everything in flow. And And as product developers, now we have to therefore think, and with experience mindset, we can look at how users look at this flow that you have there. With experience mindset, you can start to detect links between, okay, you have user needs, you have business goals, and you have the features that you have, and from there you can create basically the golden middle point there,
Right.
and how you can satisfy not only the user needs but as well also the business.
Yeah.
And I think
Well
for that
said.
we can
Conclude to a good example of it, and actually an interesting story how this great example that Carlos is showing now is the Revolut's payment example.
But before you tell the example, I think there might be some people who have not used Revolut, but I think everyone can be quite familiar with this because that's as simple as
It is
sending a
as
message,
simple
basically.
as sending a message in WhatsApp, Facebook, Viber, Telegram, any of it. So
But tell the story.
yeah, so the story. In our office, we typically tend to order a food, right? And all of us here, we have a completely different bank accounts
Yeah.
at different banks. So the person who is ordering food for everybody then is cashing in. So who's paying cash? Somebody is paying from one bank, from another bank, and so other banks. So the next day or even 2 day period, she often asks, so I haven't received money from you, and says, but I've sent you, and then there's all this waiting, somebody's complaining, so I have to pay fees because you are using that bank, and so on, and there was kind of a mess. So we tried. Just few people. I remember you was one of those, the first ones.
Yeah.
And you tried Revolut, and you're starting to send this money between each other. Said, well, this is as easy as sending a message. This is extremely fast, no fees, and happens just like that. And the expression was, hey, again, as I mentioned, you have to try it. This is so easy. And then everybody started slowly trying, and this went snowballing. And now everybody in our office is using this application because sending money has never been this easy. It just happens almost instantly, and extremely easy.
Actually, fun thing, like just read that Revolut example, like we have like a company of friends as well, and three of us had Revolut and one guy didn't, and we said, hey, you have no option, you have to get that one because otherwise we won't send you money back.
Right, and this is where this viral thing goes.
Exactly.
Not because of the marketing, not
Yeah.
because they had to buy a huge billboard in Times Square, or in this case in our city. They achieved this because they were focused on the user, and this is how, again, coming back to one of the listeners' question, how you can measure. This is how you measure. You measure this by happy customers, happy users who can brag about your service that they're using because you have made their life just easier. It's a nice feeling to have when you know that somebody somewhere in this world is thinking about you.
Exactly, and I think again, just quickly doing what we usually do, like in this presentation, putting those two examples on a scale from 1 to 10, where we have at 1 we have perceiving the product as separate parts, and perceiving the product, reading the product through the flow, meaning that we see how different intellects in the product, different parts interconnect
Right.
with each other.
Right, and
So-
rate your experiences, rate your product. Is it more fragmented? Is it more flow-oriented? 1 to 10. If you have any other good
You
product,
can write in comments like 1 to 10.
put
Maybe this
down-
time it's
yeah.
gonna work.
Feel free. Don't be shy. We are not going to judge. We are not going to laugh. We are just interested and curious and like to talk. And here, Carlos, as usual, at this point, I always ask why we expect somebody to write it down.
Yeah.
What would you do if you would rate your product now as 6 and you'd like to increase your value to the 7? What would be the smallest thing that you could possibly do?
Okay, take any product, either your or that's not yours. Just take separate part, landing page, and think how. Look at your landing page from not only one perspective, from what information about your business you can provide there. Think about what are the user goals there, what are the user goals and expectations when going there, what do they want to find. That's one thing. Then you think, okay, how we can add and satisfy the business goals as well. For instance, the conversion, but about putting the user needs, and finally, of course, finding the right features and the right technology for achieving those user and then business goals. That would be step one. And then think step two, how this, let's say, landing page afterwards creates connection with other parts of your product.
Right.
That would be a way to think. But there we have to again understand from where this originates. This doesn't originate like from the product because again, organization, how we work, how we're structured, what's the culture, that's all reflected into the
Right.
product. And
That's very valuable.
and the final thing
Thing
about the
here.
organization is that okay, how do you create this interconnection? Okay, how more projects where you can involve other team members. Let's say you're developing a new product, like a new section for a product. You just create a team from which consists of people from AML, from marketing, from development, and even management, and have them work it out and have it from various perspectives seen and so.
Right. And this, as a conclusion, what you said, is extremely, extremely insightful thing. Whatever, how you look at yourself, what kind of mindset you have, this is what we talked in the beginning, is exactly what is reflected to your product. Just think about it. What you have in your mind, in your team, what kind of vibe, what kind of environment you're building is going to be reflected in your product, right? This is extremely powerful. And at the moment we're seeing your comments are rolling in, the questions, we're definitely going to answer them because the questions and answers session is coming soon. And at this moment, stack us up with more questions while we were recapping these 5 misconceptions of the marketing age and what stands from the experience age, and then we start the full answers on your questions.
Yeah.
So send us in, we're waiting, and let us recap, and then we're gonna answer. So what we learned today, what is the mindset in a very nutshell, very shortly, and what experience mindset oriented people thinks instead of selling, information, featuring, protection, and fragmentation.
I think
bars.
before we head there, I think it's quite important that we all acknowledge and are on the same page that the world is not going to be as it was yesterday. It will change all the time.
It changes thanks to the technology, thanks to the human mind changes, thanks to the expectations.
And therefore, thinking, the mindset you have that is open to change is never been that important to have as today and for the future on. Not only for the management who decides that how the business is going to work, but even the entry level people who are actually adjusting and building that product, for instance. And that requires us to change this mindset from going from thinking how to sell, how to push the product into market, to thinking how we can deliver experience that our users will adore and that will help them, and eventually that will share it to others. And in other words, instead of thinking how to sell, we have to think how we can serve. We have to think about the user goals they have on, for example, visiting our website or opening our product, and therefore prioritize the features that we have there to adjust for their solution. Second, as there's so much information all around us, there's so many different alternatives. I think you agree. I think we can all agree there's so much information all around there.
Right.
So, and users don't read it.
They don't.
But what creates connection with them, those are emotions that represent your company. Emotions, as one of our dear listeners, thank you for mentioning that, the example of Camel Active, for instance,
Right.
delivering emotional connection that represents you and the users are engaging with. Then, most importantly, rather than offering user to answer themselves how to do a payment or how to do that and that, instead of providing a list of features for them to choose from, we have to think how we can provide this crucial solution that is as easy as just a few clicks and you've done a purchase, for instance.
Right.
Moving on, protection.
It's time to start disrupt. It's time to stop leave your warm nest
Exactly.
and leave out of it and see whether you can fly in a different kind of winds.
And finally, if we look at our business and if we look at our products, we have to end perceiving those as different parts. We have to end seeing our business as different departments. We have to end perceiving our banking applications, different sections where we have loans, payments, etc., etc. We have to take a look at how we as humans, we as users, we as customers view that, and we that view that as a whole thing, as a flow, as a journey that we take through on a daily basis. And we have to think how, one, on organizational level, our departments or teams interact and exchange information, that they're on the same page about the values they stand for instance.
Because
and of course the product, seeing how that goes from the user view, because users view again that as a flow.
yeah, and all of that together, I'd like to recap this biggest insight, that how you see the world, how you perceive it, what your mindset is reflected to your product. And if it's gonna be, if you're thinking that you want to increase your revenues and you have more and more meetings related how to sell, instead of what's our user saying, what he wants, then you're going to be more sell-oriented, and this is how the user is going to perceive you, and this is how your team is going to build your product. But at this point, we're happy to say that we'd like to answer your questions that we had and give some feedbacks, thought about UXs and things like that. And one of the questions that I liked is, what is the trend in the UX? And from my side, I would answer that there is no such a thing, a specific trend in UX. You can find an information, at least as your UX architect.
No, but actually, there are what do you think of these? Usually have each year in January you have separate companies creating blog posts, UX trends of 2018.
Right.
What do you think of that?
That's mostly about, hey, that's actually not UX trends. They're mostly UI trends. They're mostly, hey, people tend to use this, let's focus on that. That's not the trend. I would even say, let's forget about this trend. What's the most important thing that you can have is to focus on what your user wants. If you are going to ask him, he's going to tell you what the trend at the moment is. You're going to hear it. You're going to know it. Trust me. This is gold. Your user is gold, and that's a trend. This is the trend that never goes out, and the UX as such is never going to die as a trend, because that's a thinking. That's not a separate trend. That's not a thing that you can purchase just like that, because that's something you teach yourself, you teach your team, you start to understand the philosophy, you start to listen to your user.
At the very heart of that, there's this customer centricity and not being afraid to calling up your customer or reaching out to him for a meeting and talking, just having a conversation about the product and how they view and how we can help.
All right, I have a question again from one of our listeners. So about features.
All right.
How do we in our work process, and what do you suggest to others how to decide what kind of features you'd like to add, what kind of features you'd like to remove? And even to that, I'm going to answer this question more. In our case, when we build an interface, what kind of features we bring in the front, more visibly, more prominently, and what kind of features we sometimes put in the back, and why so?
I think that kind of comes from what we already discussed about understanding what's more important for the user. So, and if we look at this interface level as you phrased it, then of course you're gonna put the most important items, most important features or solutions in front for the user, of course, and the features that are not that important in the second plan, and the features that you understand that, okay, these do not add any value, you just get rid of them.
Right. That makes sense. So again, it reflects, let's ask our user, what are the things, what are the priorities for him?
But actually, I have to disagree on that. If you're gonna ask user, okay, on one hand, it's good to ask feedback, but I think when we are thinking of, let's say, inventing something disruptive, then probably if you asked, I don't know, a customer how to, or any specialist how to do better wire transfers, they just say, oh, just have
make them cheaper. That's
make
it. Make them
cheaper.
faster, make them cheaper. Okay, at here point, I see your point, right? You're talking about innovation, about stepping out of even disruption, stepping out of the existing thing. So, and here, this is also what we quite often as a specialist get the question, how do you test it? Can you prove it mathematically that this decision is the best decision that could be ever possibly created, right? And there is, what I can tell you, there's a like test-driven approach how to build things. It's always gonna reflect at this moment what the users want. This is the specific time moment. But if you'd like to step outside, if you'd like to step outside of the box, outside of the norms, then you have to think a different ways. And this is where the customer or the user, he will not invent for you a product. Yeah. He can say what he likes or he doesn't like. But to the answer, the original question, how to know what kind of features we have, what kind of features to remove, what to bring in front, what to bring in back. We again ask about the goals. We ask about what are the user core scenarios, what is that he wants to achieve at this specific screen, at this specific list of functionalities, what he's going to do, and what is the goal. And if he say, most of the time when I log into my bank account, here the feature that I do check my bank account, how much money do I have? I do want to make a payment because this is the reason why I log into my bank account. This is why maybe in most of the times this is the first reason why I have the bank account. And of course, I'm curious how my transactions are going, whether they went successfully, whether they were blocked, or any other issues with them there could be. And these are the things that many challenger banks, many fintechs, they're focusing on how to make these three extremely crucial payments, extremely crucial scenarios for the user prominent, easily to do without any friction. Because this is what they do the most. It's like, again, what I tell my customers, it's like imagine the phone where the messaging, calling, internet, and emailing, the things that we use the most, would be hidden somewhere deep under the settings. But what would you have? The possibility to update your phone, to, let's say, update your preferences, change wallpaper, set a ringtone. This would be the prominent functions, and calling, messaging, browsing the internet would be secondary functions. You would throw that phone away because this phone does not do what you ask him to do. This does not meet your expectations. And same with the banks, same with the financial services. If you ask yourself what you should remove, what should you keep, try to understand what is the most important, why anybody tend to use your product in the first place. Right? Great. So there was yet another question. As for the moment, this is the last question. So guys, keep your questions rolling in. If not, then we're coming to our final minutes. So the final question at the moment, as it is, the person asks, or at least comments. So he read UX, how the UX is worked, achieved in other agencies and at competitors. And he tried to copy this approach, most likely technically. And it didn't brought him expected results. And he's asking why. Why so? So he tried to copy existing kind of UX approach from his competitors. And it didn't work out as he expected.
I think it's, that's, I think we've heard this story quite often, and that you look at, I know, like this one service and okay, I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to attract the same attention, the same conversion, but usually in most cases it fails for one reason, that that the product might be perceived as copycat. For example, there are many startups trying to copy Revolut. At least I've noticed, or like not even Revolut, like they're trying to do the payment service. That's one thing, but I think here what we have to understand that by copying some UX elements from others, you like kind of one thing you copy only, like the techniques, like the drop down or that specific element. I think and here we have to understand why the competitors put that element there, because they have acknowledged, okay, they have a certain user need or the user perception that is best perceived that way, through that way, right?
Right.
And so I think here we are coming to a crucial answer to the question, because why it wasn't working, because behind there, as I suppose from how you phrased the question, what there behind the action of copying that wasn't any goals of the user. So and for that, for UX to work, you have to look at like this acronym again, user experience. So you have to think how with these techniques you're going to provide and solve the user needs and reasons why they're using that.
Excellent answer.
I think that's that way, right?
And for this moment, then I think it's time to wrap up all of our webinar. We'd like to say, you guys, thank you for being with us tonight, this morning, or wherever you are. It was a nice pleasure. We're happy to announce that we are having UXDA webinar, and in the future we see that this is going to happen more frequently with more interesting topics. So in the comments below, let us know what kind of things you'd like to hear us speaking about, discussing, showtailing, basically anything. Let us know your opinion, what you liked, and what we can do more.
And probably to go like proper
right.
with explosions, connecting that with the mindset. It has never been as important as before to change that mindset, and with experience type of mindset, asking how you can deliver the experiences. At the end, you're gonna deliver better financial experiences as
and
well.
Change lives for millions of people.
Exactly, and with that way of thinking, when you are
role when what you have.
Exactly, and when you have what the user needs by your hand, you know why you're doing this. The respective UX tools, techniques, and best practices will come along, or you're going to invent them by yourself. And with that being said, today we just have to take out the profit out of the center of our thinking,
right.
And instead put the customer in there, because with that the profit will follow anyway, because as we discussed, if you create a great experience, people will find that needed, then they're going to talk about that and others are going to join, and at the end profit will follow anyway.
Great. And on that segue, we have a UX design agency blog that has tons and tons of insights. One of them is how design thinking is incorporated as in banks and fintechs. We have about psychology. I have written some stuff. Our colleagues have written massive long reads about super interesting stuff. Visit our website, UXDesignagency.blog.
Maybe I can copy a link in there.
You can find link later. Feel free to reach us on the LinkedIn, personally me and Carlos, and check us out and let us know what you want to hear in the next design agency webinar. Feel free to send us an email, and hope to hear from you soon. Have a nice one. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.